In the town of Havenbrook, the fog doesn't just cover the streets, it whispers. Those who listen disappear, their names fading into the mist, never to be spoken again. Abigail thought she had escaped its grasp until it started calling for her. The old family house stood at the edge of the forest, a large Victorian structure with decaying wood and broken windows. Abigail wandered inside, her breath catching in her throat at the sight of the dusty, old furniture. Memories of her childhood flooded her, but they were overshadowed by the creeping sense that something was off. That night, as she settled into her old bedroom, she heard the faintest whisper coming from the forest. She dismissed it as the wind and went to bed. By midnight, the whispers grew louder. The fog, dense and suffocating, pushed against the windows of her room, curling and tapping as if trying to find a way inside. Abigail's heart raced, but there was something about the fog's voice, if you could call it a voice, that drew her closer. She crept to the window and peered outside. Shadows twisted in the mist, almost forming faces, but always slipping away before she could fully understand what she was seeing. Suddenly, she caught sight of a figure standing in the fog at the edge of the forest. It was impossible to make out any details, but the silhouette was unmistakably human. Her heart pounded. Was it someone lost in the fog, or something far worse? The next morning, Abigail ventured into the town. She questioned the locals about the fog, but everyone was reluctant to speak. One old man, a retired sailor named Jonas, gave her a warning: stay indoors when the fog comes. It takes things people, just like your parents. His eyes, wide with fear, told her everything she needed to know. Back at the house, she found her parents' old journals. One passage in her mother's handwriting stood out: the fog whispers our names. We must not answer. Chills ran down her spine. That night, as the fog crept in again, she bolted the doors and covered the windows, but the whispers found their way inside. This time, they called to her by name, Abigail. The next night, despite her terror, Abigail knew she had to confront the source. She ventured into the forest. The fog was thicker here, almost solid. As she stepped deeper into the woods, the whispers grew louder, surrounding her like 1,000 ghostly voices. The trees seemed to close in, their branches twisting into shapes that resembled clawed hands. Suddenly, the figure appeared again, closer this time. It didn't move, but the fog around it seemed to pulse with a heartbeat. Abigail approached slowly, her heart pounding in her chest. As she drew near, the figure's face became clear. It was her mother, or at least it looked like her. The face was twisted and wrong, a grotesque imitation. Its eyes were hollow, black voids that seemed to suck in the surrounding light. Abigail, it whispered in a voice that echoed like a distant scream. You've come back to join us? Terrified, she stumbled backward, but the fog wrapped around her legs like a predator's snare. She was being pulled toward the figure. She could hear other voices now, familiar voices. Her father, her childhood friends, all twisted into the fog. They were trapped here, their souls lost to the fog's hungry tendrils. Abigail fought to free herself, clawing at the earth. Her mind raced, remembering the words from her mother's journal. The fog whispers our names. We must not answer. With all her strength, she resisted the pull, shutting her eyes tightly and covering her ears to block out the whispers. The fog tightened its grip, the voices growing more desperate, pleading. But then, all at once, they fell silent. She opened her eyes to find the forest still and quiet. The fog had retreated, leaving only a cold emptiness. The figure was gone, and so were the whispers. When she returned to the house, she collapsed in exhaustion. But as she lay in her childhood bed, she felt a sense of clarity. The fog was a trap, a prison for lost souls, feeding on their fear and despair. Her parents had been taken because they answered its call, but she had resisted. For now, as dawn approached, the fog lifted, leaving Havenbrook in peace once again. But Abigail knew that the fog would return, and the whispers would call for her again. She wasn't sure how long she could resist, but she would try. Abigail stayed in Havenbrook, determined to uncover the secrets of the fog. But each night, the whispers grew louder, And each night, the fog came closer. And in the back of her mind, she feared that one day she might answer the call.